Greetings once again, dear listeners, and thank you for joining us here at Republic Broadcasting Network. I'm Bruce G. McCarthy, your host for the next 1 hour, and you are listening to Datum Line. In our last Datum Line broadcast, entitled Economic Myths and the Science of Deceit, Part 7, we continued our review of the so-called honest money reform proposals advanced by populists and other critics of the Federal Reserve System, using the Truth in Money book by Mr. Thorne and Warner as sort of a template. That message specifically focused on the widespread misunderstanding of the Constitution, where the power to coin money, expressed at Article 1, Section 8 and Paragraph 5, is mysteriously converted into the power to create fictitious money out of nothing, in the same way as the Federal Reserve. Endless repetitions of this myth, however, cannot create a power that was never granted to Congress. The reason no such power is found in the Constitution, for those who are at least willing to look for it, is because this power was intentionally and specifically withheld by our founding fathers in a vote of 9-2 at the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Now, the fact that we don't see eye to eye on this subject is somewhat understandable. First, when we want something bad enough, it's easy to overlook information that does not fit our preconceived notions. Second, if the judiciary seems to support our faulty reasoning, it's easy to overlook the flawed logic of politically appointed judges hostile to the Constitution. A black robe does not guarantee righteous behavior or godly wisdom in the sin-laden world of political and judicial corruption. Third, it's easy to draw conclusions from judicial rulings that are simply not there. And fourth, surrounding ourselves with people who agree with us adds to our level of confidence in what might not be so. Spokesmen of various schools of thought are oftentimes found swimming in the same pool, attending and speaking at the same conferences, quoting and praising one another. Frequent repetition of an absurdity is even able to convert it into a principle of unquestionable truth if those repetitions sound convincing to an untrained ear. Our nation's economic leadership, for example, has done a marvelous job of authoritatively dishing up nonsense for wholesale consumption. In today's message, we'll close out our examination of the principles of monetary science outlined by Mr. Thorne and Mr. Warner. Before doing so, however, we'll finish with our discourse on the disinformation being propagated about the Constitution. We'll grab an article from American Free Press and then take a look at the legislative proposal of the American Monetary Institute, sponsored by Congressman Dennis Kucinich, Democrat of Ohio, back in 2010. As stated in earlier broadcasts, our basic choice of economic reform is quite simple. Either we use something as money, or we don't. The United States Constitution mandates an economic system that requires something, such as gold and silver, be used as money, while spokesmen for the Republican, Democrat, and populist platforms insist that America continue its one-half century of economic suicide by using absolutely nothing as money. Every evil we face is liberally funded with intangible credit, the synthetic lifeblood of all modern tyranny. Our message today, Economic Myths and the Science of Deceit, Part 8. As I mentioned on the other side of this break, every evil we face is funded with intangible credit. That's what I call the synthetic lifeblood of all modern tyranny. And no matter what subject that you may be interested in, it may be the corporate takeover of America, Europe, the globe, the many mergers, huge monopolies, the Wall Street financial dictators, the bank bailouts, economic assaults on what's left of our blue-collar workforce, the record foreclosures and bank debt, private business and government at all levels. Maybe it's the United Nations Agenda 21, land use regulation, or perhaps the breakdown of national borders, the denationalization of entire countries, illegal immigration policies to accomplish multicultural amalgamation. with the consent, or I should say the consequent socio-political unrest and chaos. Or maybe it's the socio-political reorientation of our children by way of the hidden socialist agenda directed by UNESCO, the NEA, and the Department of Education. Or maybe it's the welfare colossus, the breakdown of the Christian work ethic and the demoralization of society, by way of government subsidies, grants, and transfer programs. Maybe it's the rising police state and surveillance, or maybe it's the endless wars on behalf of the Israeli lobby and the corporate empires, with increasing atrocities committed by a degenerating American military. Maybe it's the rush to extract our natural resources like natural gas, the fracking. Or how about the extraction or confiscation, you might say, of our clean water by the privatization of our water supplies. Huge corporations doing that. Whatever it is, there's a common thread that runs through all of this. It's the fact that your adversary seems to have very deep pockets. It's because it's funded with intangible credit, and there's no limit as to how much credit can be created, or almost no limit. The world at large, whether it be Central and South America, Europe, the UK, elsewhere, they all suffer from the same economic afflictions as we Americans. We're all using nothing as money, in violation of the biblical principle of just weights and measures. So you see, these Datum Line messages have a global application. There was a popular quotation that's been fielded by Federal Reserve critics for years, and it's one to which I heartily subscribe. And it's from our 20th president, James A. Garfield of Ohio. He only served for 6 months in office. His 6-month term of office ended on September 19th, 1881, by an assassin's bullet that was fired 79 days earlier on July 2nd of 1881. He said that whoever controls the volume of money in a country is absolute master of all industry and commerce. I think he actually said whoever controls the volume of money or credit. Nevertheless, it was we the people who were to have been that master. Yet without hesitation, populists at American Free Press and many others of their persuasion insist that this power was actually given to Congress by our forefathers, and that it must be restored to them by nationalizing the Federal Reserve System if we are to avert an economic collapse. So important is this myth in propping up a major fallacy that we'll explore it a bit more before concluding principles number 15 through 18 of monetary science. Now, the Constitution doesn't say very much about money or credit, but what it does say is as clear as day. And it's as clear as the framers were precise in choosing the words and phrases to express their intentions. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 5 confers upon Congress the power to coin money. That means to stamp pieces of metal into coin form. It doesn't grant any authority to print paper money, as some people call it, or money out of nothing. They were also given by that same article the power to regulate the value thereof, that being of the coined money. That meaning being the weight and the purity of those coins. So they all came out the same, per dollar denomination. And they could do that of foreign coin, because there was a time in America when foreign coins circulated as a lawful tender. But those coins could be modified to comport with ours. Now, that did not give Congress the power to tamper with foreign bills of credit or notes. Those would have been made out of paper, and we weren't using that. And Congress was also given the power, Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 5, to fix a standard of weights and measures, not to alter or amend it at a later date. What they meant by the word ounce, pound, ton, pint, quart, gallon, cubic yard, inch, foot, mile, mil, cent, or dollar, all of which are units of measure. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 2 grants to Congress the power to borrow money on the credit of the United States. Those are the words. Not the power to borrow intangible credit on the credit of the United States. Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 1 grants to Congress the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises, and to pay debts. all of which were reckoned in money. Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 7 makes two more references to money. First, that no money shall be drawn from the Treasury but in consequence of appropriations made by law. And second, a regular statement and account of the receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time. Now, taken in context with Article 1, Section 10, Paragraph 1, which says that no state shall no state shall coin money, emit bills of credit, or make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, can only mean that the money to be coined by Congress must be gold and silver. That the only money to be borrowed by Congress is gold and silver. That the only money to be regulated, in terms of its weight and purity, by Congress is gold and silver. That the only money drawn from the Treasury was to be gold and silver. And that the only statement of money received or spent would be reckoned in gold and silver. Now, from a historical point of view, money for hundreds, if not thousands of years, all the way back into biblical antiquity, was gold and silver. And most of that time, it was in coin form. All the way back to Abraham, at least to Abraham. And we're talking 2000 BC. Now, what was the unit of measure used for weighing or measuring our gold and silver coins here in the United States? It was the unit of measure called dollar, with smaller measurements called cents, and even smaller ones called mills, but we didn't have any coins that were weighed in mills. Any constitutional reference to the word dollar? Certainly. Article 1, Section 9, Paragraph 1 speaks of a tax or a duty on the migration or importation of certain persons. Those would be slaves, and that was until the year 1808. Quote, not to exceed $10 for each person. And the Seventh Amendment speaks of the right to a trial by jury in suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20. Those aren't very big numbers, but a dollar weight of silver or a dollar weight of gold used to command a great deal in the marketplace. That was before we started watering it down with credit instruments. Now, to put all of this in perspective, the Coinage Act of April 2nd, 1792 states at Section 11, in pertinent part, and this is an important Coinage Act because this is the one that actually implements the United States Constitution with respect to our economic policies at governmental levels. It says, quote, that the proportional value of gold to silver in all coins, which shall by law be current as money within the United States, shall be as 15 to 1. Section 16 says in pertinent part, quote, that all the gold and silver coins which shall have been struck at and issued from the said mint, that was in Philadelphia, shall be a lawful tender in all payments whatsoever, not just a legal tender. Remember, there's a difference between legal and lawful. Legal is the form of law, lawful is the substance of law, and in law, substance governs over form. Section 20 says in pertinent part, quote, that the money of account of the United States shall be expressed in dollars. I'm going to stop right there. It does not say that dollars are the money. That's an error. It says that the money of account of the United States shall be expressed in dollars or units, dimes or tenths, cents or hundreds, mills or thousands. And it goes on to say that all accounts in public offices and all proceedings in the courts of the United States shall be kept and had in conformity to this regulation. That's still a law, by the way. Section 9 of that same Coinage Act isolates the definition of the word dollar, saying, quote, dollars or units, each to be of the value of a Spanish mill dollar, as the same is now current. Well, what was now? Well, 1792. And we had Spanish mill dollars, so-called coins, that were circulating in the United States. That was part of our money back in those days. And it goes on to say, and to contain 371.25 grains of pure silver, or 416 grains of standard silver. Now, back in those days, standard silver was 11/12 pure.